Welcome back. Let's learn how to adjust the keyframes. So, let's say I'm not satisfied with the last position of the precomp of the letter A. I want to move this precomp a bit to the left. If I select the layer at a random point in time, and then move it to the new position I want, I'll mess up the animation. If I press the U key to see the keyframes on this layer, I will see that an unnecessary keyframe is created at this point in time. At the point where I stand with the time indicator. And that's not what we want. This happens because we already have keyframes in the position property. Alright, I will delete this keyframe. And let's learn how to do it. So, in order to change the last position to where this precomp should be, we need to focus on the specific keyframe we want to change. In our case, it's this keyframe. So, we have to stand on this keyframe, and only then move the precomp to any other position we want. So now, when we are on this specific keyframe, we can press the left arrow on the keyboard, while holding down the Shift key to move this layer to the left. Now let's adjust the position of the text precomp, according to the new position of the letter A. So select this precomp, and move it to the left. Let's see how that looks. I think we moved the letter A too much to the left. So, let's stand on the last keyframe once again, select this precomp, and only then adjust the position. Let's move it to the right a bit. And now, move the text precomp to the right as well. Let's see how it looks. Okay, now I see that the letters are moving too fast to the left. Pay attention to the text when I move the time indicator. It's colliding with the letter A. Let's change that. To do that, let's go into this composition. Now select all the layers and press P to see the position property for all of them. As you can see, the movement to the left takes 2 seconds. If we focus on just this layer, you can see that the animation starts at 2 seconds and ends at 4 seconds. In other words, the duration of this animation is 2 seconds. To slow down the animation, we need to move the last keyframes forward in time to make this animation last longer than 2 seconds. So, let's select all of these keyframes. And let's move the keyframes according to the animation of the last layer. It currently ends at the second number 4. So we need to move the keyframes to the second number 5. Hold the Shift key while doing this, to ensure that the keyframes snap with the time indicator's position. Great! And now let's go back to the main composition, to see how it looks with the letter A. I think we can start this precomp a bit earlier. So let's move it backward in time a few frames. Try adjusting the timing between precomps and check the animation to make sure it's what you want. I think we should start it from the 4th second. This is a regular working process in creating animations in After Effects. When we create an animation, we often have to make adjustments to the timing of each layer's keyframes until we are happy with the final result. For instance, at the moment, I think that the letter A stays for too long in the scene and needs to be adjusted. I would like the letter A enter the scene a bit earlier. For this, I will select all the keyframes on it, that is, the entire animation. Now I will find a time point that I think works, for example, at the 3rd and 15th frames. Now I'll move the keyframes here and see what I get. And now, because we've moved the animation of the letter A, we need to move the animation of the other letters accordingly. This means we need to move this precomp to a slightly earlier time point as well. For example, here. Let's see how it looks now. I like it. And now, it's time to create an exit animation for the logo. So let's get started. First, we need to select all the layers and place them in a single composition. Press Ctrl-Shift-C, change the name to Main Animation. Select both, and hit OK. Now, we need to create a background for our scene, using the background color from the original logo design. To achieve this, let's go back to the project panel, open the folder with the logo design layers, locate the background, and click on it to view its color. Next, we'll create a new background. In After Effects, we can create a layer called Solid for this purpose. To create a new solid, right-click here on the empty area in the Layers panel, go to New, and select Solid. Now select the eyedropper, and sample the background color from the design. And before clicking OK, we can change the name to BG, and ensure that the size of the solid matches the composition size. Then click OK. And there it is, we got a real background. Let's just bring it down. Now let's learn how to create this cool disappearing effect, as seen in the example. The first thing we need to do is create an adjustment layer. Adjustment layer is a special layer in After Effects that allows you to apply effects and adjustments to multiple layers simultaneously. Instead of applying the same effect to each individual layer, you can add an adjustment layer and apply the effect to that layer. The effect will then be applied to all layers below it in the layer stack. The benefit of using an adjustment layer is that it allows you to make global changes to your composition quickly and easily. So, after understanding what the adjustment layer is, let's create one, and see how it can help us to create the disappearing effect we need. In order to create a new adjustment layer, we need to right-click here, go to New, and select Adjustment Layer. Now, let's bring this layer to the top. You can close the folder now. And now, I will hide all the layers just to show you that the adjustment layer is an empty layer created in the size of our composition. On this layer, we can add effects and create a kind of filter that will affect all the layers below it. Okay, so I will turn the layers back on, and let's add the first effect to the adjustment layer. The first effect we will use is called Turbulent Displace. Drag it onto the adjustment layer, and start adjusting the parameters. You can see that it creates a wavy distortion on the scene. Let's tweak the parameters until we get something interesting. Let's start with the amount. I think we can set it to 30 for now. Next, in size, let's set it to 20. On second thought, let's set the amount to 60. Alright, and now, we can make it even more interesting by animating this distortion. And we can do it by rotating the evolution. But instead of animating his property manually, we can use an expression to make this rotate without creating a single keyframe. Expressions are a powerful feature that allows you to automate and control different aspects of your composition. Expressions are essentially small pieces of code that can be added to various parameters of your layers or effects. Expressions in After Effects can be created using JavaScript or the Extend Script language, and can be accessed and edited through the Expressions panel. In order to create an expression, we need to hold down the Alt key and click on the stopwatch of the property we want to animate. Now, a code line opens for us, in which we will write a very simple expression, time *100. To finish the action, click somewhere outside the expression box. Now, this parameter will rotate without us creating keyframes for it. And if you want this motion to be faster, you can change the time expression to 500. For this, click on the expression to open the expression line and change the number. I think is too fast. Let's set it back to 100. Now, let's move to the second number 10 and create an animation for the amount property. We'll set that at this point in time, the value will be 0, and create the first keyframe. Now, let's move to the second 16 and increase the amount to 100. Let's see how it looks. Great! We can now select all the keyframes and press F9 to convert them into easy ease keyframes. I think this animation is a bit too slow, so let's move the last keyframe to the second 14. Let's see it now. Looks good. Now, we can close the layer and add another effect called Fast Box Blur. So, search for the effect in the Effects panel and drag it onto the adjustment layer. Now, let's press U to see the keyframes of the previous effect and time the animation will create for the blur effect to match the animation of the previous one. Let's stand at this point in time and create the first keyframe for this effect with a value of 0. To see the keyframes we've created on the layer, let's press U once, and then once again. There, we can see the keyframes for the blur effect. Now let's move to the 14th second and increase the blur to 30. Let's see how it looks. 30 seems a bit too much, so let's stand on this keyframe and change it to 10. That looks better. Now, let's select these keyframes and convert them to easy ease as well. Let's see how it looks. It looks excellent. We can close this layer now. Finally, we can label this adjustment layer. So select it, press Enter, and change the name to Blur Effect. Press Enter once again to finish the action. Now, let's find a good point in time to make the logo disappear. Let's say the logo will start disappearing at the second 10. To make it disappear, we need to access the opacity property for its pre-comp. To do that, press the T key. Now, create a keyframe at opacity 100. Then, move to second 12 and change the opacity to 0. Let's also ease these keyframes. Let's see how it looks. In my opinion, the logo disappears too early. Let's select these keyframes and start the disappearance from the second 11. Let's see it now. Let's try the second 12. I think that's better. Now, if we select the adjustment layer and press U to see its keyframes, it seems that the timing of the logo's disappearance matches the end of the effect animation, which is great. But I think we can increase the size of the distortion even more. Let's try 30. Looks great. And with this, we finished creating the animation, and we are ready to render it. Now, before we render the project, let's review everything we've created from the beginning to the end, to check for any glitches or errors. I noticed that the letter A is moving to the side in a weird way. Let's try to find the problem, and fix it real quick. So, let's enter the main animation pre-comp. Now select the A animation pre-comp, and press U to see the keyframes on it. Let's take a look at it again. You see, the letter A is not moving at the same velocity as the other letters. To check this, we can select the keyframes for the position. Hold the Alt key, and double-click on one of the keyframes to access the keyframes velocity panel for this property. And there, we can notice that the velocity of this animation is different from our other animations. If you remember, we had set the velocity of all the keyframes of the position parameter to be 85 by 85 for all the letters. Let's make the same here as well. Now, let's return to the main composition and check how it looks. Great! Now it seems like the animation is in the same motion. However, I think that the letters animation is a little too slow. Let's learn how to speed it up. So first, let's enter this pre-comp again. Now, enter the text comp. Stand with the time indicator at the 4th second and move the last keyframes here. If you don't see the keyframes, you can select all the layers and press P. So let's move these keyframes to the position of the time indicator while holding down the Shift key. Now let's return to this composition and see how it looks along with the animation of the letter A. Looks good. Great! Let's go back to the logo animation comp. And now, since we've shortened the logo animation, we need to make it disappear faster too. To do this, we'll select the adjustment layer and press U to see its keyframes. Then, we'll move all the keyframes to the 9th second. Now, let's reach the 13th second when the logo has vanished completely. And learn something cool you can do with After Effects. In After Effects, you can create markers within your composition to identify important points in the timeline. These markers are extremely useful, and I'll show you how to use them in the next part, so see you there. It's going to be awesome.